Walsh here. The fight continues. It's not over. It's just begun. I'll explain when Freedom returns at 5.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Pleased to be joined again by our friend Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and former U.S. Navy lieutenant commander. His book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Dr. Jasser, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Before we get to the attempted terrorist attack in New York earlier this week, I just want to get your take on something. We were talking about it the other day, and it's about kind of holiday celebrations, and particularly as it pertains to college campuses, where you have some of the dumbest people walking upright in charge. And
they're works in progress, Dan.
There's here in Chicago at Loyola University, there was a Muslim student group that essentially was complaining about Ramadan not being as celebrated and woven into the day-to-day experience at Loyola University, a Jesuit Catholic university, as, say, Christmas. I mean, they didn't accuse anybody of being disrespectful or prohibiting or otherwise creating hurdles for the expression of the faith of Islamic students or Jewish students or anybody else. But it's like they wanted to be equal in terms of elevation. You're talking about a Catholic university. How do you react to that position that the Muslim students were taking?
Well, it saddens me that the community thinks that those are our priorities. I went to University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and was there for 3 years, and then medical school at NCW in Milwaukee, and I always remembered, and my parents taught me that if I lived in a country where the majority felt that they could practice their faith and wanted to practice their faith publicly and openly, that they would then want to protect the minority rights to do so, because otherwise you end up having this hyper-secularization like you see in Europe. And that's what is so beautiful about America, is that the First Amendment, the first freedom that we have, religious freedom, when the majority celebrate it, they protect it for the minority. Now, our Muslim Liberty Project talks about the fact that we are Americans that happen to be Muslim, not Muslims that demand to be American. Respect comes with time, it comes with an understanding of Ramadan is, and they're putting the cart before the horse. I think in a country right now where they see Muslim militants, separatist ideas that are radicalizing, I think it's a bit much to say, well, why don't you also celebrate our holidays? I never felt I couldn't celebrate my fasting and holidays in America. Was it equal to the majority faith? I don't think that's the number one concern that we have right now. I certainly was never limited in that practice, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, it seems to me that the difference between America and these Islamic republics, for example, or other totalitarian states, and the core of a free society, peaceful pluralism and free and fair elections. And so peaceful pluralism, of course, includes religious tolerance, but it's this culture now of validation, and of course, it's in its worst example on college campuses. But everything I am and believe needs to be validated by everything else. I mean, I don't need anybody to validate that I'm a Catholic. That's my faith, and so on and so forth. But that the validation element of it, that's certainly not limited to Muslim students or the Muslim community. It's part of a rather unfortunate degradation of culture in America, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a case in Chicago of a teacher that demanded that she be able to go to her Hajj, which is a mandatory thing for Muslims, but certainly not mandatory when you're 25, 26. And the Chicago School Union said, well, she can't take 3 weeks off in December to do that. And in my book, I talk about the fact that there's moderate demands of faith practice, and then there's extreme ones. And sometimes if you push the envelope too much, the Obama administration ruled in her favor, mandated that the Chicago school system have understanding, diversity teachings, etc. I think in the end that made more of a separation for Muslim students and teachers, and did not really serve the end of helping us assimilate and become respected and understood. And these things, often when you push the envelope, end up causing more problems than good.
So that teacher was able to go on the 3-week mission? Yeah,
the school ended up having to apologize. And unfortunately, you can do that any time in your life. You don't have to do it in your mid-20s. And to demand you get 3 weeks off more than anyone else, my question is a slippery slope one. Anyone could say on a basis of faith they need 6 weeks off, 8 weeks off during finals, et cetera. It wasn't about religion. It was the union saying, you can't take 3 weeks off during finals in December. And yet the Obama administration ruled in favor of protecting that based on religious practice, which I think it really had nothing to do about religion.
Now, getting to this failed terrorist attack in New York City, this man from Bangladesh in the country illegally, beneficiary of chain immigration. And so this has raised the issue again of chain migration and making immigration more merit-based than familial-based outside the nuclear family. And I wonder what you think about chain migration and some of what's been discussed, by frankly, even by some Democrats, but certainly Republicans across the spectrum. It was a central issue that was raised by Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush in the presidential campaign, in addition to Trump.
Well, I think any rational human being, and I think I earned a bit of an ability to have an opinion about this since I've been trying to get family out of Syria, not only since the revolution in 11, but even before. It makes sense for nuclear families to stay together. You don't want to separate parents from kids or a nuclear family, spouses from each other. But at the end of the day, extended families don't filter for, America is an idea. If you're coming here, I hope you're seeking freedom from persecution, from torture. You want to embrace the social contract of America. You understand what a secular society is. You want to escape theocracy. But if you're a communist, if you're a fascist, or if you're an Islamist or jihadist, genetics does not filter for such a thing. Extended family by marriage does not filter for ideology. So, as you all know, many in our families have folks that are uncles and cousins that have diametrically opposed ideas or worldviews than we do. So that cannot be the way a country filters on who it brings in and who's safe and who's not safe. Simply because my cousin is in Philadelphia doesn't mean that if I live in Syria, I then have a right to come to the United States when my cousin could be a Democrat and I may be a Islamist jihadist. And those things need to be filtered.
What's your ideal immigration plan then?
The immigration plan should be based on, number one, that we not shut the doors. I think America changes who it is if we don't welcome people escaping oppression and want to be free. So the number one thing is that they legitimately are escaping persecution. And number two, they bring something to the table. It's merit-based, either economically, intellectually. They bring resources in. They're not going to become, as we see in Britain and Europe and elsewhere, many Islamists come in and come on welfare. And that doesn't necessarily help the society that you bring to it. So be merit-based and be ideological where they embrace who we are. And that isn't as difficult to discern as you think it is. In a half an hour, 45-minute interview, you can tell if somebody understands what the American worldview is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. You always want America to be a safe haven for those seeking asylum. And so, and there's disagreement on exactly what that looks like in terms of rethinking our immigration policy, even among conservatives. I'm a conservative, and I don't agree with Tom Cotton's RAISE Act, which would cut legal immigration to the United States by 50% over the next decade. I wonder what your take is on that. I mean, part of this to me seems like we play the big government game when we get into reduce it by 50%, reduce it by X percent, increase it by X percent, only so many H-1B visas. Well, how do these guys have the secret knowledge to know exactly what the number should be any more than they have the secret knowledge to know what the number should be in any other walk of life with 330 million people? And so it seems to me it should be more kind of principles focused and case specific than setting these arbitrary targets.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, every time one of these individuals we find tried to commit an act and we learn about the program he came in on, we say, oh, that's the problem, and this whack-a-mole continues. It's more of a whole-of-government approach to ideological vetting, and I agree with you. Some of the most leading Americans that have changed who we are immigrants that brought with them a desire to be free. I served on the USS El Paso with the head of cryptography on my ship that was a Vietnamese immigrant. His family had escaped the oppression there. And there are so many stories of immigrant stories that just can't change who we are as Americans based on numbers and quotas and things. And we can't get whiplash by going from one administration that really was trying to just open the floodgates almost in an Angela Merkel kind of way to one that just wants to shut it down based on numbers. We need to remember who we are. America is an immigrant nation. This guy, by the way, Ullah, everyone we're finding is actually radicalized here. So, yes, the visa program reform might have prevented the original problem, him, from coming in 2011, but actually he was radicalized over the last 3 to 4 years while he was here. So that should remind Americans the bigger problem with national security is actually them being radicalized here by Islamist groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations that, by the way, hours after the attempted bombing, is lecturing Americans on behalf of the Ullah family about our justice system, et cetera, which shows that the radicalization is happening here, not over there.
No question about it. He is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, great American, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, co-founder of the Muslim Reform Movement, former U.S. Navy lieutenant commander, and the book that he wrote, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Dr. Jasser, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.